Okay, welcome back to another episode of Shashank Redemption, where we talk entrepreneurship, where we talk about starting your own company. We talk about learning from other entrepreneurs. And today I'm super excited to host Kate Hao. She is the founder and CEO of Happy Mango. So welcome to the show, Kate.
Okay, thank you, Shashank. Thank you for inviting me.
So to start with, let's talk about your journey before we get into Happy Mango and what it's doing and what are you trying to solve in terms of problems here. I know you went to Harvard, you worked with Morgan Stanley before starting your own company. So walk us through your personal journey or professional journey all the way up to leading up to starting Happy Mango.
Sure. So before starting Happy Mango, I spent over 10 years working at Morgan Stanley. Well, for the most part, when I was working there, I didn't felt like I would start my own company. I started off working at Morgan Stanley shortly after I graduated from college and returned to Morgan Stanley after I finished my MBA. So I enjoyed what I was doing, but something happened around 2008. At that time, I was trading bonds that were backed by consumer loans. And these consumer loans included student loans, car loans, mortgages. And then these loans were then packaged and structured into securities, bonds that I and many others traded. And for those of you who had memories of that period or read about that period, you know what happened subsequently. The financial crisis, which was basically triggered by a systemic devaluation of these bonds. So I believe many, myself included, went through a kind of a soul-searching process of what happened, what caused it. And depending on the person you speak to and depending on their personal experience, you will get different answers. But for me, I felt like there was that part of the reason that led to that financial crisis was that the financial market did not have an accurate and forward-looking measure in assessing consumer credit risk. And I felt like I should do something about it. Mm-hmm. So that was the initial idea of Happy Mango. But once I started the company, I realized there are other problems that I had to solve.
Sure. And it's I shouldn't say it's surprising, but there are many similarities to our story here, Kate. One, the fact that when I was in business school, my thing was that I'm here because I want to start my own company someday. And that's why, in fact, I worked for General Electric, just like you did for a large company. And then I moved to actually a very super tiny company. I was the second employee there, only to learn how to build a business from scratch. So my goal was always, at some point in time, I want to start my own company. Mm-hmm. And then my founding Insta Mortgage was also based a lot around 2007-8 crises, because mm-hmm. I was in the mortgage business. I was head of business for a mortgage company, a VC-funded mortgage mm-hmm. company then, and I saw everything that the lack of education, the kind of mayhem it caused, not just within the housing industry, but the overall financial services, actually the global markets itself. And I went about thinking that what would educating these clients do? And hopefully we can, in a small way, prevent another 2008 from happening. So when you were telling your story, I was like, okay, that's the motivation around starting your own companies is kind of very similar. That brings me to Happy Mango itself. So of course you have extremely noble cause, and you were thinking about doing something which is larger than just, say, making money from a business. So tell our audience about what Happy Mango actually does.
Sure. Happy Mango is a technology company, and we help financial institutions serve low to moderate income communities. And our clients include community banks, credit unions, and not-for-profit loan funds. We, Happy Mango, provide an online platform to help these financial institutions cut down the cost and the risk in delivering affordable financial services to the communities in need.
And I couldn't help but ask this question: why the name Happy Mango?
Well, that is, well, you're not the first one to ask me that question. Actually, at the very beginning, at the founding of the company, I heard a lot of grumbles about, this does not sound anything remotely related to credit or finance, and it sounds more like a neighborhood takeout, a Chinese takeout name. So I actually tried a few times changing the name of Happy Mango, but every time we tried, we keep on going back to Happy Mango. But to me, it feels joyful. It represents the idea of breaking down the barrier of finance. It shouldn't be scary. It should be something that's too serious. We have finance, we deal with financial service on a day-to-day basis. And the ideal of Happy Mango is to make affordable financial services available to anyone who needs it. And so we stuck with the name Happy Mango. But the meaning of it is actually, it's taken from my name and my husband's nickname. We put them together. That is Happy Mango.
Very cool. And of course, there are multiple companies which are named after fruits. Of course, the famous ones being orange and apple, and we all know that how successful those companies are, and especially coming from the cultures that we come, mango has, even as a fruit, has very special significance in the part of making us happy, right? It's a fruit that practically everyone likes to eat. So I get the happy angle from it, and yeah, and I'm glad that you actually added happy before it, even though mango by itself is quite happy. So that's
just to make sure. Yes, it's a happy mango.
Exactly, just making sure. So let's get into the root of it. 2008, you were right in the center of what was happening. You had a front row seat, not in a good way, I would think, about what was exactly happening in Wall Street, what was happening with some of these mortgage-backed securities, and then you decided that some of the reasons that why this happened was because lack of education, or the lack of the fact that some of the people that could afford homes could not. So tell us about this entire underserved market. Why would you, I mean, the entire financial services market in the US is bigger than most other industries in the entire world. So there are multiple demographics that you could have targeted. You have a stellar academic career, you have a stellar professional career. Why did you pick what, in my opinion, is probably the hardest?
That's a great question. I think in some way, I feel like I stumbled into a problem that I felt like I had to solve. So I talked about that, I felt like, from my perspective, as you described as the front seat in the 2008 crisis, after that experience, I thought that, maybe kind of, my academic training tells me that there's something wrong with how we measure credit risk. I got to do something about that. But then after I started Happy Mango, started trying to sell my services of measuring credit risk in a different way to the banking system, that's when I realized, well, it's not just the fact that we don't have an accurate way of measuring credit risk. There is as much as 20% of the population who are not even in the credit market, because financial institutions don't know how to assess their credit risk, or they don't know how to serve their financial needs in a way that would make sense to them. Make sense meaning making economic sense. And these people are people who don't have credit score or have extreme low credit score, people who don't have regular paychecks, or people who recently become responsible for their own financial affairs, meaning that they probably, because of that, they don't have a credit history, and they don't know much about how to manage banking, how to manage credit. As you said, they may not have had much of financial education at all. And they could be new immigrants, they could be young people, they could be re-entry citizens. And these are people in our lives. And most of them are also low to moderate income in population, and they are earning less than most of us, but they're paying so much more for the same kind of financial services that we're getting. For people like you and me, we can probably just walk into a bank to get a personal loan at 3 to 4% today for any kind of emergency spending, like fixing our roof or sending our kids back to school in September. But for people who don't have access to that, they have to pay 300 to 400% to get a payday loan, to get the same amount to do the same thing. That is unacceptable. So if we fundamentally believe that people are equal, then that should not be an acceptable fact. So after, I guess you could say that I have been in an ivory tower a little bit, giving my, education or past work career work experience. And after I started Happy Mango, that is when I realized that I could create something that could help 20% of the society to make their life better.
Yeah, and we all know that what could that potentially lead to, right? I mean, they're starting with financial education, they're starting with personal loans that can go into a car loan, as you said, eventually, say, hopefully home ownership. And we all know that for most majority of the underserved, the net worth of a homeowner is 25 to 30 times that of a renter. So you're literally changing not just a generation, but generations to come by making this impact. Now let's talk about, so of course you, as you said, you have been a little bit in the ivory tower, so to say, Harvard, Morgan Stanley, and then you start a company. Talk to us about first couple of years. Is that you could be as talented as you were, Kate, when you started, but we all struggle usually in the first few years of building a company. Walk us through some of the hurdles, or really what was the experience in the first 2-3 years while you were building the platform for Happy Mango?
Yeah, I think that there was a lot of mistakes and a lot of learning, and I think it was a test of my patience. So when you're first starting a company, you have this vision, you feel like you have the solution to a big problem. You want to put it to work. You want to see it working, but to get from 0 to 1 is such a long process. And this may be particularly true in the financial industry because, as we know, financial industry is one of the most regulated industries. And an average bank, for example, may have 3 to 6 regulators. To launch a new process or new way of doing things, they have to be compliant with all these rules. And there are often layers of governance within the bank or the credit union, to make sure all those compliance would be checked off. So the decision process is long. So it took me 12 months from the initial meeting to signing the contract to get my first client. And I did not expect that to be so long. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, taking a lot of people when they come to me asking for advice to start a company, and most of these people are technically very skilled in whatever they do. But one of my first questions, usually because of my own experience, and it looks like your experience too, Kate, is usually where are you going to get your first 5-10 clients from? And that's where the struggle is, because they know how to build a product. They have the skills and whatever they're doing, they might be great coders and all that, but they haven't usually given a thought around client acquisition, is because they think if they will build a great product or if they're really good at designing something, then the customers will come on their own. And this is a really good lesson for everyone listening, is that client acquisition should be on top of your business plan, because if there's really no money, you can build the best product in the world. It really does not serve in the purpose, in the sense that your business is going to struggle right off the bat. And that's a consistent theme that I see with a lot of people. So thank you for sharing that. Now let's talk about what's next for Happy Mango. So you've now been doing this for a few years. I mean, you founded it at the end of 2013. So it's what you're coming in close to now 9 years of building Happy Mango. Any plans for raising capital? What are or building some new features into the product? What does the next, say, 12 to 24 months look like for Happy Mango?
So one of the things that we are focusing on is continue to expand our small business lending offerings. So as I mentioned earlier, Happy Mango started off focusing on consumer lending, and we gained a lot of traction in that part of the market. And during the pandemic, some of our clients needed a technology solution to provide PPP loans to their communities.
Yes.
And we help them build that. And in that process, we all realize that there's a lot of functions and skills that can be transferred in from the consumer lending to the small business lending part, especially that in the low to moderate income communities coming out of the pandemic, you see more people want to start their own business now. So to meet that demand, we are working with banks and credit unions and loan funds to launch small business loans that are smaller than $1 million, smaller than $500,000. So which is a segment that most banks or most of financial providers in the main street are not making, in terms of small business loans. So that is one sector that we're really focusing on right now.
Yeah, makes sense. And that also shows your adaptability and being flexible and nimble to the demands of your customers. You're not, some founders are so tight into what they offer, and they don't see this opportunity that they see, which you saw. So you, not just from a business perspective, you saw that opportunity, you also saw that your clients actually needed it. So it was a win-win from that perspective, because PPP came very quickly and most of the banking institutions were not ready to offer it. And so I'm glad that you were able to work on it. Now, to wrap it up, Kate, really, I want to ask you something for our audience here, because a lot of them are entrepreneurs. They're thinking of starting their business. They could be seasoned, they could be new. What are some of your top learnings? Let's say top 2 learnings that you've had founding and building and expanding Happy Mango to where it was, to where it is. What would you say were 2 or 3 things that if you could go back, maybe you will do it faster, you will do it better, you will do it different, and what can our audience learn from it?
So I think that I would probably say for 4 words: be humble and be patient.
Very hard 4 words.
It's very hard to do. Yes. And because, you hear the word entrepreneur and it just sounds so exciting. But, the day-to-day of living the life of an entrepreneur is actually quite unglamorous. It is really about listening to your customers, keeping an eye on the market and staying on your toes. And, you have to keep on reiterating, you have to keep on experimenting, you have to check your pride and at the door. You have to just focus on the problem solving, focus on what you're doing, focus on listening. And you know that you're going to make mistakes. And you just need to realize that quickly and quickly fix them and move on. So I would say be humble and be patient. Those are my 2 big lessons.
Yeah, and very wise words. And you were so right to say that entrepreneur or founder or CEO, all of that just sounds so glamorous on LinkedIn. And wait until you get to live that life, and it's anything but glamorous. So I totally agree with that one. I totally identify with that one. Thank you, Kate, for spending a few minutes with me here and helping our audience learn some of the lessons from building what promises to be a game changer for a lot of underserved community. Because we discussed about this before, nothing builds generational wealth like financial education, which could hopefully potentially lead to homeownership one day. So tremendous work there, Kate, and thanks again for being with me.
Thank you for having me, Shashank, and thank you for sharing my thoughts. And it's a pleasure.